So Reuters is out with an interesting story tonight, indicating some crude quality issues for the Mars oil stream. That's oil coming from the Gulf of Mexico, offshore of Louisiana. This has been talked about for almost a week now that there was some crude quality issues with that stream via various reporting agencies and services. 2 days ago, there was a story by Reuters that said zinc contamination in the Mars crude oil stream pushed down the prices into a discount versus WTI at Cushing. So moving from a 75-cent premium to a 10-cent discount, 75-cent premium to a 10-cent discount. And then Shell was quoted in the story as saying that their product that they contribute to the Mars stream didn't have any quality issues. The story went on to say that the contamination was likely caused by an additive used on one of the offshore platforms, as zinc is not typically occur naturally in crude oil. It did note that running crude oil with the zinc through the refineries can lead to corrosion or damage. So I guess based on the story 2 days ago, I kind of thought that this was going to be a short-term issue, and it may still be. If it truly is an additive issue at one of the platforms, I would think that would be rectified pretty quickly. However, Reuters is out with another story tonight indicating Exxon has told its trading counterparties that it will not buy Mars crude oil until the zinc contamination issue is fixed. Two sources said. The slight discount to WTI at Cushing continues into Thursday, as indicated in that story. So, since we're doing a little bit of a series on Louisiana, I thought this would be a fun one to dive into, the potential implications. Again, I kind of think that this is going to be a short-term issue, but we'll see. You never know with stuff like this. So what are the implications if Exxon and potentially others start taking less of the Mars crude oil because of the contamination, not taking any of the Mars crude oil? We don't know how long that'll last, but it's good to look at the potential supply and demand implications if that were to maybe go a little bit longer in time. So let's I'm going to pull up the map here, and we'll go over some of the pipelines and that move the Mars crude oil. So let's pull up Mars really quick. So this is an offshore pipe. It directly connects to the offshore Mars platform here on Mississippi Canyon 807, moves crude oil this way. It's joined by, or it's fed, I should say, by Olympus and Ursa pipelines, as well as probably some others out here. But these are two of the main ones, two of the original ones that it was fed by. If we look at the flows, so flows into Port Fourchon, which is here. If we just click on those and take a quick look at those. So Mars is feeding, let's call it 250 to 300,000 barrels a day into Port Fourchon. Now, this is likely all Mars grade crude, and it's just commingled there in Port Fourchon. It's also joined by Amberjack pipeline here, and I think this crude is all mixed here. So I would assume this is all part of the Mars blend that's coming in here. So if we look at Amberjack flows, we also have about 250,000 barrels a day that's coming into Port Fourchon. So 250 to 300,000 on Mars, 250,000 on Amberjack. So you have about a little over 500,000 barrels a day of what I assume to be Mars grade quality coming into Port Fourchon. So where does that barrel go from there? Most of it continues on Mars pipeline. So I'm going to take Amberjack off. So Mars pipeline continues north to go to Clovelly, where it dumps into loop storage here. So that's about 400,000 barrels a day. So of a little over 500,000 barrels a day, about 400,000 barrels a day continue to go up to Clovelly to the loop storage. The rest of it, and if we click on the transaction point here, so this is what Mars is dumping off to Port Fourchon. You can see the Amberjack receipts that it's getting, and Amberjack only delivers into Mars here, no other pipelines. But Mars also dumps some of its oil here to Chevron. So Chevron has a Fourchon system, and I'll just pull that one up quick. So Chevron system is moving that barrel this way over to their Empire terminal, where it can get on other pipes and come up here and feed some of these New Orleans refineries, potentially going up further and feeding some of the other refineries up north. It can also feed Chevron's Pascagoula refinery via the Cal-KY pipeline system here. So some of those barrels, let's call it 100 to 150,000 barrels a day from Port Fourchon is going up here to the Empire terminal. But again, most of it's going this way. So continuing on, what happens to this barrel once it gets to Clovelly? I told you it dumps into loop storage there, at which point the barrel is joined up with some other offshore oil and potentially some onshore oil as well. But it goes on to LOCAP, the LOCAP pipeline, which takes it further north. So if we look at LOCAP, we can look at the transaction point here and see, yep, LOCAP is getting basically all its receipts from that loop storage facility at Clovelly, about 500,000 barrels a day. And that's going north to Raceland, where a little bit is dumped to Genesis, as you can see there. But most of it goes all the way north. We'll take a look at the flows. It's about the same to St. James facility here. So in St. James, it's delivering, so that you see the negatives here, to a variety of different storage and pipelines. This is a big hub for storage and transport with a bunch of other pipelines coming in and out. And what we want to focus on here is we're making our way slowly up to Exxon's Baton Rouge refinery, which is over 500,000 barrels a day. So again, just to go back, we had 400,000 barrels a day roughly of Mars crude coming this way. That's getting dumped into Clovelly. It's being joined by and commingled probably with some other offshore crude. And then about 500,000 barrels a day is making its way up to St. James. At St. James, we're going to shift our focus to what is probably Exxon taking here. Now, barrels are being separated here. We can't track what exactly is coming in, how much Exxon's taking of Mars grade versus what's coming across on other pipelines, potentially from Texas. We don't know that. There is some separation of crudes here, and they're likely taking from a few different sources. But we do know that LOCAP is delivering into Exxon a certain amount. So let's just focus on Exxon deliveries here, or what LOCAP is delivering into Exxon's storage and pipelines here. So that's this graph. And then we'll also bring up Sentinel as well. So Exxon and Sentinel. So Sentinel is a JV. Exxon JV'd some of their pipelines out of here that feed their Baton Rouge refinery to a JV that them and Sentinel run. So this should give you an idea of what LOCAP is feeding Exxon pipelines. So from the St. James facility, we'll turn on the Exxon pipelines and just take a look at those really quick. Let's clear everything out. Let's keep LOCAP up. So I'm going to clear the Exxons. We're going to take a look at the Exxon system before they did the Sentinel JV, just to see what it looked like and to see the total number of barrels. So they're moving about 400 to 500,000 barrels, right around 400 to 500,000 barrels up until the time they did that JV, at which point this system was split into two. So what I want to take away from this is they're moving from St. James and then a little bit from Raceland too, about 400 to 450,000 barrels a day. If we close this out and look at what it looks like today, what remains after they split those pipelines into the JV is their Sola and Red Stick pipelines. So these are bringing a little bit of barrels up via the south line. The majority of the barrels are coming up this bigger line though, so 250 to 300,000 up this north line. And then Sentinel is bringing up some as well. So if we look at Sentinel, I'm going to turn off Sola here. So this is just Sentinel you're seeing now. A little under 200,000 barrels a day up Sentinel. So they're still bringing, let's call it 450 to 500,000 barrels a day up into this Baton Rouge, their Anchorage facility here, where they're feeding their refinery. So 400, I would say right around 400,000 barrels a day is coming this way of offshore crude. This could be a mix of Mars and other qualities that they get from the St. James area from here. Also, what's feeding this refinery, Permian Express comes down and feeds this refinery with about 100,000 barrels a day. Genesis has something that's feeding this down here. Genesis has a pipeline that's feeding into the Anchorage facility here. So that also helps feed that. If we look at what the actual refinery reports, you'll see here the Exxon numbers. These are a little inflated versus the flows I showed you, as they're taking those Permian. You don't see Permian Express on here because Permian Express actually delivers into Anchorage, and then the last mile of pipeline is taken by those like a short haul Exxon pipe into their facility. So that's why you don't see Permian Express here. But there's about 100,000 barrels a day of Permian Express feeding into their Anchorage facility. So you also get Sentinel. You see the Sentinel numbers here. You see Exxon. There's a little bit off Genesis. They do get a little bit of marine stuff as well. So that takes care of that. So in an environment where Exxon, and I'll just clear this out. We'll give a clean slate here. And bring Mars back up. In an environment where Exxon's saying, hey, we're not going to take any of this Mars crude anymore, and let's just make up a number, 200. Let's say they're taking 200,000 barrels a day normally of Mars crude. That crude has to go somewhere else. So that can go to other refineries in the area if the refineries are willing to take the stuff with potential quality issues or zinc in it. Maybe they aren't too concerned. Maybe their facilities can handle more zinc in their inlet. But what will happen is the price of Mars will drop, which is what you've seen, to where somebody will take this barrel. So this barrel could sit at storage at Clovelly. My guess would be it probably gets exported. These extra barrels end up getting exported, and then Exxon will be left trying to replace their barrels with something else. So if we were to look at a crude quality chart, and we're getting into an area where I certainly am not an expert on crude quality, but if you look at something that's close to the quality, if they were trying to replace those barrels with something of the same near quality, a medium sour, which is what Mars is, you would be looking largely at imports coming in. So they could certainly get some imports from Loop. So just going to bring up Loop again. So they could get imports from the offshore terminal here that could come in and replace what they were getting from Mars at Clovelly. And then that Mars barrel, this is bidirectional pipe, the Mars barrel could potentially be exported as well. So those are the shifts I think you'd see in supply and demand if the Mars barrel was not able, or people would take less, the refineries onshore would be willing to take less or none at all. I certainly think there'd be a market for that somewhere via blending it into diluting it and blending it into other streams that maybe offshore or other world refineries would want to take. So that's a quick overview of kind of how I see that turning out if this were to be long term. We'll talk more about this market next time. I spoke briefly on my first Louisiana video that these refineries are very much tied to the offshore. So offshore hiccups like this, or increases in supply or decreases in supply of the offshore, are really going to impact the supply and demand picture of this Gulf Coast little cluster that we talked about. So this southeast corner up into Baton Rouge is really driven by what happens to the offshore. So thanks for joining. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. If there's stuff that you want to see, please reach out to us. If you want to use the tool that's free for everyone for right now, please reach out, use it, have fun with it. We're building new stuff every day. Please reach out if you have any questions, and thanks for listening.